The morning sun over Gotham City was like watered-down whiskey, pale and devoid of warmth. Schiller set down his coffee cup, the ceramic making a crisp sound against the tabletop. He heard the approaching click of heels, a frantic drumbeat against the polished hallway floor. An instant later, the office door flew open, and Anna, a blonde woman with a face as grim as the Gotham sky, slammed a stack of files onto his desk. "Those damned slackers at freshman registration just called in sick en masse," she announced. "You're covering the desk for the day." Schiller's gaze drifted from the files to her face, the corner of his mouth lifting in a barely perceptible arc. "I'm on my way," he replied slowly, "and I'll consider this coffee a gift." "In your dreams, Schiller," her retort echoed from the office behind him. In good spirits, Schiller carried his coffee from the office. He glanced up at Gotham's eternally leaden sky, marking the beginning of his 5th day in this world. In his previous life, he had been a psychologist. A plane crash had hurled his soul into this city of salt, of the earth, people. Fortunately, his new identity was neither hero nor villain, but something far more stable: a university professor, reprising his old profession in the field of psychology. Just as Schiller was contemplating how to coast through the day, a soft ding sounded in his mind. A line of virtual text appeared. "Peter Parker has sent a chat request." As he walked toward the registration office, Schiller replied in his thoughts, "What is it, Peter?" The reply exploded in his head with all the breathless excitement of a teenager. "Hey, I'm starting my internship at Oscorp tomorrow. You have no idea how hard I worked to get this chance. And Gwen. I mean, she's interning too, so we're going together. It's awesome. We can talk about genomic helices and all those amazing machines." Schiller calmly made a mental diagnosis: a typical adolescent mating display, accompanied by mild social ineptitude. No girl, he thought, wants to discuss genomic helices on a date. Get a grip, future spider, man. Since arriving in this world, he had acquired something called the comic book chat system. The first person he'd unlocked was this chattering spider, kid. For the past 4.5 days, Peter Parker had recounted, in exhaustive detail, the entire saga of his crush on Gwen and his insecurity-fueled inability to act. Schiller offered a few practiced words of encouragement as he arrived at the registration desk. He sat down, began organizing the forms, and waited for the incoming freshman. Strangely, in all his days in Gotham, he had never seen the bat signal illuminate the night sky, nor had he heard of any supervillain's grand feats. The city was abnormally quiet. Soon, students began to trickle in. Schiller's job was simple: record their names, assign dormitories, a mechanical and repetitive process. Next, he called out without looking up, his voice tinged with perfectly calibrated weariness. A figure sat down opposite him. Still focused on the form, Schiller asked, "Name?" "Bruce Wayne." "Bruce, men's dormitory, building 2, room 306. Schiller's pen flew across the paper as he spoke. Then, suddenly, the nib froze, leaving a dark blot on the page. Without changing his expression, he lifted his head, his gaze, as precise as a scalpel, landing on the young man before him. Black hair, blue eyes, and a handsome face wearing a mask of practiced detachment. Schiller's tone remained flat as he confirmed, "Wayne." "That's right." The response held a note of casual self-assurance. Schiller's eyes dropped back to the form. He tapped the pen cap against the assigned dorm number. "Men's dormitory, building 2, room 306. Take your form and move along. There's a line." Now it was Bruce's turn to be taken aback. He was unaccustomed to such dismissive impatience. He picked up the form and stood, but couldn't resist asking, "Pardon me, which department are you a professor in?" "Psychology." Schiller finally raised his head fully, his gray eyes meeting Bruce's through his lenses. "Don't take my class, kid," he added. A flicker of interest sparked in Bruce's eyes. Schiller, however, felt only a rising sense of helplessness. So, Batman was just starting college. No wonder Gotham had been so peaceful. Just his luck to be dropped into the Dark Knight's prequel era as a university professor. He was acutely aware of how dangerous Batman's story was, especially with this 18-year-old brat, currently perfecting his Playboy disguise, sitting right in front of him. Bruce said nothing more, offered a terse "thank you," and turned to leave. After the last of the new students had been processed, Schiller was heading back to the faculty apartments when he realized he'd left his keys in his office. On the stairs, he ran into a tall, thin colleague. "Jonathan," Schiller greeted him, "back for something?" "Professor Schiller, yes, forgetting your keys again." The man's smile was thin and stiff. "Afraid so. Anna had me in a rush this morning. See you tomorrow." "See you tomorrow." The moment they passed, an unexpected chill crawled up Schiller's spine. Jonathan Crane. The name detonated in his memory. With his back now to the other man, Jonathan didn't see Schiller's head whip around, his gray eyes suddenly sharp with alarm. If he hadn't just registered a young Bruce Wayne, he would never have connected this timid colleague with the coming nightmare. The supervillain's Scarecrow. A Gotham University psychology professor with doctorates in both psychology and chemistry. The madman who would one day turn Gotham into a living hell with his fear toxin. Schiller took a deep breath, forcing himself to maintain a steady pace up the stairs. He analyzed the situation with cold logic. The Jonathan of today was not yet the Scarecrow. Bruce had not graduated. Batman had not been born. At this moment, Crane was a minor figure in the field of emotional psychology, not the master psychologist he would become. In terms of academic reputation, he himself, Schiller Lecter, a world-renowned expert in criminal and abnormal psychology, and Gotham University's most distinguished professor in the department, was vastly superior. No wonder Jonathan's attitude had been so deferential. But what good was that? A coldness settled in Schiller's gut. He couldn't develop toxins. He was purely a humanities scholar, an academic who struggled to move a chair. Jonathan, on the other hand, had a doctorate in chemistry. Study the sciences and you'll have nothing to fear. The saying felt bitterly ironic now. Schiller knew with absolute certainty that the curtain was about to rise on the bloody stage of Gotham's history, and he was standing front row center, utterly defenseless. Forget a supervillain on Scarecrow's level. Any one of the gun-toting thugs from the comics' background panels could easily end him. His fears became reality the very next day. In the morning, Schiller arrived at the university's counseling center for his usual shift. He had just poured himself a coffee when a crisp knock sounded on his office door. A young, steady voice came from outside. "Professor Schiller, may I come in?" Schiller took a deep breath, a wave of irritation washing over him. This damned counseling center. Had a student actually shown up? He was only here to collect a paycheck. Standing outside the door was Bruce Wayne. Schiller suppressed his annoyance and spoke in a tone of professional indifference. "Please, have a seat. What psychological problem requires my consultation?" Bruce sat in the chair opposite him and gestured casually, the Playboy persona on full display. Can't a student come chat with a professor without having a problem? Schiller pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose, the lenses reflecting a cold light. This is a place for students seeking psychological counseling. If you do not have an issue to consult me about, then you may leave. He delivered the line with a tone more monotonous than a delayed flight announcement. But Bruce was clearly unfazed. He leaned forward slightly, asking with keen interest, "All right, then I have a question. What do you think is the meaning of life?" "A trap, a test." Schiller took a deep breath and quickly opened the comic book chat system in his mind. He remembered that for successfully counseling Peter Parker, the system had rewarded him with a random chat opportunity. He typed without hesitation. "A young man whose parents were murdered, who has sworn revenge on all criminals but hides behind a Playboy fad, has just asked me what the meaning of life is. I just want him to stop bothering me in the future. How should I answer? Online, urgent." Soon, a reply appeared. "I am a teacher. Regarding your question, I believe you should maintain ample patience and provide this unfortunate child with psychological guidance from two perspectives." The sender's name made Schiller's eye twitch. Charles Xavier. Professor X, of course, the founder and headmaster of the Xavier Institute, right in his element. Schiller's attention was drawn to Charles's profile picture. He noticed it was clickable. He pressed it in his mind. A dialog box popped up. Randomly copy one ability level from your first chat partner. Yes/no. Schiller chose yes, without a second thought. Telepathy level has been equipped. Instantly, Schiller's vision blurred. A flood of chaotic, fragmented thoughts rushed into his brain like a tide. Anger, sorrow, confusion, vigilance. A torrent of unfamiliar emotions battered his consciousness. It took him a few seconds to steady himself, realizing he had indeed acquired a portion of Professor X's power. It was an extremely weakened version. He couldn't read clear thoughts, only vaguely perceive the core of the other person's emotions and a few strong, fleeting ideas. But that was enough. Schiller focused, directing his full attention to Bruce. He sensed a chaotic storm. This young man was nothing like the cavalier persona he projected. In Schiller's mind, the image of Bruce Wayne was rapidly reconstructed. Having just finished his studies and travels around the world, he was attending university merely to maintain the fad of Bruce Wayne. The real him already despised this tedious, tasteless routine. Every drop of his blood roared with a single word: revenge. To Bruce, the professor opposite him had suddenly lapsed into a profound stillness. Schiller's slightly unusual gray eyes now seemed like two bottomless lakes. As Bruce met that gaze, his own honed intuition began to scream warnings. He felt he was being watched, seen through, peeled back layer by layer. Then Schiller spoke, his voice calm and clear, echoing in the quiet office. "Perhaps you've been waiting for someone to give you an answer, an affirmation. If receiving that answer will give you something better to do than bother me, then I am willing to give it to you." Bruce leaned forward, a sharp light in his blue eyes. "Oh, and what is that?" Schiller stared into Bruce's eyes. He could clearly sense how, when he spoke the next word, the volcano of hatred inside the young man erupted violently. "Revenge." As Bruce's expression turned thunderous, Schiller enunciated each word, looking him directly in the eye, and repeated it in a tone that stated a simple fact. "The meaning of life is revenge." He ignored the face that was now as dark as the Gotham sky, leaned back in his chair, and said in the manner of a concluded diagnosis, "Now, are you satisfied, Mr. Wayne?"